Welcome to the channel. My name is Mike, and in this igloo back behind me, I'm in the beginning stages of building a 28-foot long outboard powered cruiser based upon Doug Hyland's Boulder design. Today we'll get a start finally installing some of the first permanent boat pieces, and that'll be the transom. All right, so as exciting as it is to finally be able to start installing some of the permanent boat parts, hard experience has taught me that this is the time when I should just slow the heck down a little bit and take a minute, verify the work that I've done, make sure that I'm moving forward with a solid base. The aft section of this boat has several parts that are best installed at this stage as opposed to later on once the hull's rolled over. So in order to make sure that those last few stations are in place, I'm going to set the laser up and check all the station molds for both level and then on the center line. And then I'll spring a plastic batten that I use for kind of crude fairing in a few places. And if everything all agrees with each other, then it'll be time to move forward and get the transom mounted. Looks like I got everything within about 1/8 of an inch, more than adequate for what we're doing right now. And the next step will be to take a batten and go ahead and spring on a couple places on the sides and here on the bottom and just triple check. I know this plastic batten really isn't going to give me the exact perfect depiction of fairness that a wooden batten would, but they're fairly much indestructible, and the sheen that's on this outside right here sometimes can make really spotting some gross problems obvious. So this is going to be good enough to get the transom started, get it mounted and start cutting it to shape, and then when the time comes we'll do this with some proper Alaskan white cedar battens that it's going to be the same stock that we use for the planking. Now, the last thing I want to make sure I take care of before I go any further with putting anything on the strong back, and especially before I start putting things in the way of being able to see the water lines with the laser, is I'm just going to take the laser and set it up just a few inches off the ground so that it will always be underneath everything, and just go ahead and put a series of marks on all of the legs all the way around. It's probably not even really necessary, but I am on dirt right here, and it will be just a little bit of peace of mind for me to be able to check the legs against each other, and probably a couple spots on the inside of the shed I'll mark also, just to make sure that over time as the weight gets put on the jig that we don't have something sink and go out of alignment. Well, here's a transom in all of its glory, where it's been patiently waiting since the very first clearing was done inside the shed to start this boat project. It's got to be well over 100 pounds. So once I have bracing set in place and all my reference marks and everything laid out, Megan's going to come out and give me a hand this afternoon so we can hoist it up into place.
Hey folks, it's Editing Mike here, jumping in to explain what it is we're looking at. So this is the jig that I used to form the transom around last fall, back when the weather was still nice and epoxy would still cure. So the way I created this was I took the 143-inch dimension that Highland provided to the inside face of the transom, and then I just set a sawhorse up further back in the garage, and using a long board as a giant trammel, scribed an arc for the first piece. I then used that piece as a template and ran the router to cut out the rest of the pieces in the same way that I cut the station molds out in the previous episode. So the last couple additions are these cleats that you see here that I added right at the ends as kind of help index the pieces of plywood as they're laminated up. The transom itself is a lamination of 5 layers of Meranti plywood, totaling just about 1 inch thick and glued together using thickened epoxy. Clamping the entire lamination just at the ends, as you see here, turned out to be a really effective and easy way to avoid having any screw holes in the transom out in the middle of the field, and really resulted in a nice fair curve, which I then proceeded to stand on like a fool. So the only caption I can think of for this clip is, "Here, hold my beer."
Get off one of my feet, dog.
Rest.
What?
Rest.
Okay, so come over here, please. It's gonna have a little bit of an angle to it. So we're gonna lift it up. Okay. Got that?
Yes.
Keep yourself clear. I'm going to do myself a little safety favor and put a kickstand on it. There's a just in case, and then I'll put some more screws in also. There it is.
Next step.
Now with the transom blank in place, you can see what the plan was for the designer for having the transom blank glued up oversized. What I'm going to do now is move over into what I call the shop, but what's called locally here in New England, apparently half of the garage. And go ahead and start cutting some battens up out of the actual planking stock. And then I'll head back out here to the shop, lay it across the forms right here, and really fare into the bottom or to the inside of the transom at several locations and connect it all together and cut it out to its final shape. Come on down quite a bit. There you go. Now that Megan and I have gotten the inside of the transom blank marked off and roughly fair with the shape of the hull, I can take some of the bracing off and probably remove this back form and go ahead and get the transom blank trimmed up to roughly what's going to be its final size. I am going to leave just a little bit proud of the lines themselves so that once I start attaching everything, I can take off a little more as necessary. It's much harder to have to add something back that I've taken off a little too soon. Well, now that I've gotten the transom roughly trimmed to its final shape, the last step really is to take these offcuts and cut about 1.5 inches in width, maybe 2 inches in width, and then epoxy and screw those around the perimeter on the inside as an additional nailing surface for the planking and the bottom plywood. So I'm going to head back into the shop and get these trimmed up, and then debate whether I have enough room inside the house to bring this and have it warm enough to actually do the epoxying. And I've changed my mind. Instead of taking the transom off and taking it inside and epoxying this doubler on like I spoke about earlier, I think I'm just going to go ahead and secure it maybe every 8 or 10 inches with some of these number 8 screws. And then that way what I can do is keep moving forward on some of the other pieces back here in the aft end that are going to intersect, and they're going to have cleats of their own, and also I'm going to want to epoxy together. I think I'll shift the strategy more towards just kind of getting everything dry fit and locked in place and maybe even roughly faired, and wait for better weather and then epoxy it all at once. Okay, well, that's about as natural a stopping point as I'm going to get, and that's going to wrap it up for this transom episode. So in the next one, we're going to get a jump on tying together all the plywood pieces that really form the aft end of the boat, and maybe get a start on fairing this stuff into shape in preparation for planking. Thanks for watching, as always, and I hope you come back and join us for the next one.